In this video, I'm going to teach you how to create two different ceilings in a single space. And this is a really important skill because it's common to see within, for example, a living room or a large meeting space or office, several different ceiling types at different heights. So what we're going to do is create a drop ceiling made of gypsum wallboard that butts up against an acoustical ceiling tile ceiling. And we're going to be able to see the ceiling in several different views. And we'll be able to see how to place different ceilings on top of each other at varying heights in a single space. So let's go ahead and begin by looking at our reflected ceiling plan. And I want to do a little ceiling treatment here in the kitchenette. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and put an underlay of where the cabinetry and everything goes here so that we can see what we're dealing with. I'm going to go over to the view. You can do it on the sheet or the view, it doesn't matter. But it just, I don't know, allows me to get a little bit more focused in on the drawing itself instead of the sheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is just bring in the underlay. Now it should allow me to bring in the floor plan as an underlay. And usually that would be right here, but it's not letting me. So let's take a look and see what's going on. I'm going to pause for a minute. Okay, so this is what the problem was. This is great. So the issue is when I go to underlay, it's showing me my only options are to look at the reflected ceiling plan. And the reason why is because when I renamed this view, it changed all associated views. So it actually changed the floor plan view as well. So if I hit this, it's going to show me the floor plan underneath because the floor plan is not properly named. So I'm going to go ahead and change that again. So we're going to change that back to floor plan. And then when it asks me if I want to change all the views, I'm going to say no. So it's named correctly for the ceiling plans and it's named correctly for the floor plans. They just have two different names. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at this area. So what I want to do is have a drop ceiling over this kitchen. And then I want it to meet up against this acoustical ceiling tile ceiling. So what I'm going to do first is take a look at the height of this ceiling here, the acoustical ceiling tile ceiling. I always want to call it ACT. So the height of that is 10 feet. So a drop ceiling here would look really nice at 8 feet. Let's take a look at an elevation quickly just to see how high our cabinets are off the ground. Or below the ceiling. And we can see them in this elevation view. So this is the crown molding here, which would need a little bit of finessing to make sure that it wraps around and does everything properly, but we're not going to focus on that right now. What I'm going to do first is measure the distance between the upper cabinets and the ceiling. Okay, so that's 3 feet. So we could do 3 feet or we could do our drop ceiling at 2 feet. I'm going to go ahead and leave about 12 inches above here just for lighting or to collect some dust. And in normal circumstances, we would have also some crown molding that would run around the top of these cabinets as well. Okay, so we know we can do a drop ceiling that's 2 feet tall. So let's go ahead back to our reflected ceiling plan. And I'm going to grab the outline of the ceiling once again. So I'm tabbing through to grab it. And you can see, there it is. I'm going to edit the boundary. Before I do that, I'm going to hide this. I'm going to see if I can hide. I don't know if it's going to let me. I'd like to hide this crown molding because it's kind of making it difficult for me to see, but I don't think it's going to let me. Darn. Okay, let's go back to editing the ceiling. Okay, so if I hit this check box, this is going to stay acoustical ceiling tile. I'm going to now just quickly add a gypsum ceiling in these two areas so that they have a ceiling. And you just go ahead and grab the interior of the wall. Let's see. Here, we'll start with this one. And you can see I'm hesitating and I'm kind of having a hard time because this this crown molding here is making my view very difficult. It's nice to do your crown molding at the very end because there's just not a way to hide it in the view properly. But in any case, we've got a gypsum wallboard ceiling at 10 feet off the ground in here, so these ceilings are a little bit higher. And then I'm going to go ahead and edit that boundary and then add the ceiling here as well. So I'll pause for a minute. Okay, so you can see here I edited the boundary and there's two separate boxes here, and you're allowed to have sort of two separate areas so long as they're both enclosed. Okay, so there's our gypsum wallboard ceiling at 10 feet, and now we're going to do this one. Okay, so same thing here, but I'm going to do a new ceiling because I've got some other stuff that I have to add to this, and I want it at a different height. So if I were to make this same gyp ceiling here connected with these boundaries here, then they would all be 10 feet off the ground, but this one's at a different height. So I have to draw it separately. Okay, so there's the boundary. What I want to do is have this be 8 feet offset. Okay, so I'm going to just check it in a section view real quick, make sure it looks good. Okay, so there's the ceiling that we just drew, but we need to fill in this area. And so the next thing I'm going to do is create a little wall that starts at this line and goes up to the ceiling. So then when I edit type, I just want to edit this wall, not the entire type. So the offset is going to be 8 feet because it's going to start at 8 feet and go up to 10. So let's take a look and see. This means that it's bumping into other crown molding. Okay. So let's take a look at that section view and see how it looks. Okay, so there's the wall. So I actually have to do a different wall type completely for this because you can see it's got baseboard here. So I'm going to hit edit type. I'm going to say that this is a soffit because this is a drywall soffit. And then I'm going to delete the sweeps. Okay, so there is our soffit wall, and let's take a look at it in a different view. Okay, so there's going to be a seam in this in this structure where the ceiling and the wall meet. Now we can bring it so that the seam is visible at the front instead of at the bottom, and all we would have to do would be just move this up just a little bit. So that it aligns with the ceiling thickness. So let's go ahead and take a section view of that, and we'll take a look at it and see if we can move it up just a little bit. Now you're going to see that there's some funkiness happening with the crown moldings here. And what I'm going to do right now is just leave it, because finessing crown molding is and making it wrap and do exactly what you want it to do is a rather long process, and one that we don't really want to get into right now. It would just take a really long time and valuable time away from what we need to learn in order to really start to mess with these things. But you can edit the profile of the sweep by dragging it here and moving it around and turning corners and things like that, which you're welcome to play with on your own time if you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to grab a section view and I'm going to move this wall so that it sits on top of this ceiling instead of the way that it's shown now. So I'm going to just take a look at that section one more time. You can see I'm going to bring it up. And I'm going to bring this ceiling out a little bit. And notice it's not going to let me change the profile of the ceiling in this view because this is not the view that I drew it in. And Revit can be kind of funny about that. It'll allow you to move certain things in section view or in different views, but because this is really like a plan object, it's not going to let you stretch it out. But it's really easy to do that. We can just go to the reflected ceiling plan and we can bring it out right here. And now I just want to take a look at it with my camera view again and see, you can see there's going to be a seam somewhere. but that's maybe a little bit clearer. So you can see here we have a beautiful soffit that meets up against an acoustical ceiling tile. And so you've got two ceilings at two different heights, and you've seen it both in a section view and an elevation view and in a perspective view. And we will be detailing it a little bit later on. But that's how you do it. And you would have now that wall type to create all different soffits if you wanted to add them anywhere else in your project. But now this is ready for some either a really unique wall treatment or just some really nice recessed can lights, but that's how you do it. Looks good.